Hey guys, what is up? I hope you're having a fantastic day so far, and the first 10 episodes of Steven Universe Future are out and have given me a lot to think about. And no, it's not about the lore of the show, but rather the inevitable time in our lives where we grow up. I think it's safe to say that for the majority of us, when we were younger, wanted to become adults as quickly as possible. But once you become an adult, you kind of wish you could go back to being a kid again. And not only that, but you're dealing with the pressures of having to figure out the rest of your life, being independent, maintaining friendships with those from your adolescence, and so on. And these are all things that Steven Universe Future has captured with Steven. And honestly, this has been one of my favorite parts of the show so far, seeing the repercussions from the original Steven Universe series and how it is affecting an older Steven. It's one of the aspects of the show that I have gravitated most towards, and I feel is the most relatable for myself. The past two episodes, Little Graduation and Prickly Pear, being the episodes that have hit the hardest. But even earlier episodes of Future have shown Steven struggling with maturing. So with all of that out of the way, let's get into how Steven Universe Future captures the pain of growing up. In Little Homeschool and Guidance, we see how Steven feels that he is responsible for fixing things. First, with him not being able to convince Jasper to attend Little Homeschool and then trying to fix Amethyst's internship program. This is something that adults face every day. There is the pressure of always being the solution and never being the problem. And considering that in the original Steven Universe series, Steven was always the one to help people, it makes sense he feels pressure to help everyone. The thing is, Steven often helped people without it being something he felt pressure to do. Rather, it was his childlike innocence that led him to helping so many people. So now that Steven is older, he feels like he needs to help everyone. The problem is not everything needs fixing, and not everyone will accept help, as we saw in both Little Homeschool and Guidance. And Steven is still learning that even as an adult, he can't always be the solution to every problem. In Rosebuds, we see how Steven tries to welcome the Rose Quartzes with open arms, despite him having awkward feelings about the situation. I think we have all had a point in our lives where you may be uncomfortable in a situation, but you put on a formal and welcoming face. And I think this applies to adulthood in being pleasant and not causing issues. This is similar to what I previously said about adults solving the problems and not causing them. It also touches on the adult responsibility of playing host to guests. In volleyball, we see a similar theme from before of wanting to fix things. In this case, it's Steven wanting to fix problems that his mother has left. Again, this is Steven feeling like he needs to be the one to pick up the pieces of other people's messes, trying to be an adult in this situation. But in this case, we see the frustration Steven has built up of being the one who needs to fix his mother's mess. And this is very true to life, whether it's a job, a friend, or a family member. Sometimes you just get handed a pile of problems through no fault of your own. But when you're an adult, it doesn't matter how the mess ended up in your lap, rather it's how you fix it is what matters most. Similar to Rosebuds, in Bluebird, we see Steven trying to be kind and accepting of Azurite Bluebird despite knowing that they are a fusion of Eyeball and Aquamarine and feels they are here for revenge. Steven is proven right in the end, but he takes the advice from the gems that he should be welcoming instead of following his gut instinct. Again, showing us it's more important to be polite and welcoming in playing host than being wary and trying to protect those closest to you. With a very special episode, we see Steven taking on too many responsibilities at once, between helping Pearl with babysitting Onion and helping Garnet with the Geminar. Steven has put too much on his plate, and I feel we all have been guilty of biting off more than we can chew. I feel that when you hit high school, it's especially pressed upon people to be involved in as many things as you can. It's the pressure of needing to get into a good college that so many students end up getting burned out and stressed over grades, sports, volunteer work, and extracurricular activities. And while Steven may not be enrolled in school, he is still running one and has responsibilities to fulfill there, as well as others outside of Little Homeschool. And we can clearly see it's taking a toll on Steven. Snow Day is the first episode where I felt that the show really faced the theme of Steven maturing head on. Steven feels he is being looked at as the little kid he was in the original series and not the person he has grown into. Again, this is an incredibly relatable topic. I'm at the age where I'm an adult and a college graduate, but I still feel that my mom, aunt, or grandmother still look at me as a kid from time to time, and not necessarily on purpose. There's probably a part of them that wishes I could always be that little kid, but the inevitability is that everyone has to grow up at some point. And not that people want to be treated completely different from when they were a kid to when they're an adult. Most people are just looking for the acknowledgement and respect. This is something that I feel Snow Day handled very well with Steven and the Gems. The Gems didn't want to make Steven feel disrespected. They just wanted to have fun with him like they used to. But Steven changed, and that's just something that they had to accept in the end. Why So Blue is focused mainly on Lapis and not Steven, but we still see elements that I've talked about previously, with Steven opting to go his way of convincing the other Lapises to come to Little Homeworld instead of Lapis's way, which was the way that ended up working in the end. Albeit Lapis almost destroyed the other two, but you get the idea. The thing that I do think showed Steven's growth here is that he didn't intervene with Lapis. He let her come to the conclusion on her own about what she was doing was wrong. So this is a step in the right direction for Steven compared to his actions in earlier episodes. Lastly, we have Little Graduation and Prickly Pear. As I said in the beginning of this video, these two episodes were some of the hardest hitting when it came to the pain of having to grow up. With Little Graduation, we see how friends growing apart from each other changes the dynamic of the group. Steven is still in the mindset that Lars and Sadie might end up together based on their experiences from the original Steven Universe series. But Lars and Sadie have done a lot of growing up on their own, and this changed the relationship between the two. Steven wants to have things be the way that they were before and desperately tries to play matchmaker. Steven actually ends up projecting his feelings onto Lars when in actuality Lars is fine with Sadie dating Shep. It's really when Steven asks Lars if he's okay and then Lars reflects the questions back at Steven that the realization hits him that things aren't the same and his friends in Beach City have all grown up. And this is hard for Steven to accept. Given the pressure he is already facing, it's understandable that he wants to hang on to something that gives him a sense of normalcy, and one of the most logical things that would be are his friends. But as shown in the episode, Steven feels that he and his friends are drifting apart and he needs to keep them together. This is something that I think everyone can relate to. I think we've all had a friend or a group of friends who were incredibly important to us. And for whatever reason, you end up drifting apart or going in different directions in life. And it's hard. That rock that you always had, that comfort you felt, that normalcy you got used to, it's not there anymore. And this doesn't mean that that person or that group isn't important anymore. They still played an important role in your life, but sometimes in order to grow or be happy, people have to move on and go in a different direction. I think this is something many people deal with during high school and college. In high school, you have your friends, and then come college, you all go in different directions. You may keep in touch with some of them, you may not, and then you meet new people in college. It's almost somewhat of an elevator, where for certain moments of your life, you'll have people with you along the way, but eventually you all reach your own stops. And at those stops, you might get new people along for the ride. But it still doesn't change the importance of the people you already had the ride with. And this is what Steven comes to terms with by the end of the episode. Things being the exact same won't maintain a friendship. Rather, it's the willingness of those friends to stay in touch no matter how much changes that maintains friendships. And I think this is such a mature lesson to put in the show, and one that I wish we would see more of in media considering how relatable it is. Lastly, we have Prickly Pear. And this episode kind of summarizes all the previous issues Steven has into one. Steven has left Little Homeschool as it's become too stressful and something he doesn't have a desire to do anymore, and in doing so picked up gardening as a hobby. However, we see early on that Steven is projecting his thoughts and feelings onto the plants, which isn't healthy. Essentially, Cactus Steven is just a manifestation of all these bad feelings he is having. It's one thing to have thoughts to yourself, but it's another when those thoughts are repeated back to you verbally. And we see Steven struggle with this harsh truth. We see him questioning why he feels the need to be needed, feeling the pressure to fix everything, not feeling like he can turn to others for help. Becoming so stressed, he lashes out at the ones closest to him. We see it all come to fruition here, and it isn't until Steven accepts these thoughts and feelings that Cactus Steven calms down and goes his own way. But I think the killer of this episode is the ending. When Pearl offers to talk with and listen to Steven, he dismisses it. And sadly, this is something that I feel so many people deal with. Shoving feelings away and not being able to let these negative thoughts and emotions out. It's honestly become romanticized how characters have tragic pasts, trauma, depression, and so on, but remain stoic through it all. And I don't find this healthy. We see Steven following this trend of trying to handle everything himself and putting on this facade that everything is fine. This is something that I have dealt with personally, feeling like I have to solve all my own problems and putting on an act to make others think I'm fine when in actuality I'm not. And I know many others feel the same way. They dismiss their own feelings and well-being for the sake of appearing to be totally fine. And I think the saddest part of this episode is that it ends with Steven ultimately not being able to talk about his feelings with the gems. I doubt that the next episode will pick immediately back up after this episode, but I'm hoping Steven is able to let his walls down in the second half of Steven Universe Future. I think Future does a good job of showing what constant pressure on kids can do to them as adults. Steven, the kid who was always so positive and willing to talk to anyone about their issues, has now become the kind of person that a younger Steven would have most likely wanted to help. And I think that the Crewniverse has done an excellent job of illustrating this so far in the show. And honestly, I'm so glad. As odd as it may sound that I'm happy Steven is struggling, I think this captures the unfortunate and inevitable truth about the pain of growing up. Steven's journey so far throughout Future has been one of the plot points I have related to most in the entire series. And I think it is so important we see the struggle of growing up. I mean, it's not something that we can avoid. And I hope that the more we normalize seeing the struggle of growing up, the easier it will be to actually talk about our experiences and offer ourselves that release. And I can only hope that by the end of Steven Universe Future, Steven is able to do the same. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you have a fantastic day, and until next time, guys, take care.